Documentation for less scarring, ladies. Call Dr. Christopher Chase for an appointment now, 624-0021.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, welcome back in here to Backfire headquarters, where we keep it nice and warm in here all the time. Anyway, we've had some good conversation even while we're on break around here. I'm going to start recording these conversations while we're on break, and then we'll play them back to
then we'll really get in trouble.
Our audience after we come back after our break, because actually I think some of the best conversations on Backfire happen during break here. Anyway, y'all were arguing about Mr. Obama some more and the sequester, and what else was it, Franklin, you were talking about here?
Well, in my judgment, the biggest story of the week is not getting enough attention.
Tell us what it is.
A number of documents from the 9/11 era have come out with the people who wrote them, giving interviews.
Okay.
Very candidly and straightforwardly saying that there was no evidence of a connection between Iraq and the 9/11 attack, no evidence that Iraq had a weapons of mass destruction program going on, and that key people inside the Bush administration, Paul Wolfowitz, for example, on the very day of the attack, was already writing memos talking about how to invade Iraq, how to overthrow them, how to make a public case for connecting the dots between these people and that. I mean, we invested almost 5,000 American lives there. 15 to 20,000 more troops severely wounded. We've spent about $1 trillion on Iraq. We're going to be paying almost $1 trillion in the next 30 years for veterans benefits for Iraq veterans, which we owe and we have to pay. Right? And that's an outrage. And I don't care whose party it is. I mean, and I say that as somebody who fully supported the president's decisions at that time, because I couldn't believe that that wouldn't be true for them to say that. I just couldn't conceive of it. I was 100% behind the decision.
You remember back in 1987 when Ollie North was being questioned about things going on. The lecturer the other day was playing on the news video of Oliver North testifying the Iran-Contra hearings during the Reagan administration. There was Ollie sitting in front of God and his country, getting the third degree, and what was said was really stunning. He was being drilled by a senator. This senator was saying, did you not recently spend close to $60,000 for a home security system? Ollie replied, yes, sir. The senator continued, trying to get a laugh out of the audience. Isn't that just a little excessive? No, sir, continued Ollie. No, and why not? Asked the senator. Because the lives of my family and I were threatened, sir. Threatened by whom? The senator questioned. By terrorists, sir, Ollie answered. Terrorists? What terrorist could possibly scare you that much? His name is Osama bin Laden, Ollie replied. At this point, the senator tried to repeat the name but couldn't pronounce it, which most people back then probably couldn't. A couple of people laughed at the attempt. Then the senator continued. Why are you afraid of this man? The senator asked. Because, sir, he is the most evil person alive that I know of, Ollie answered. And what do you recommend we do about him? Asked the senator. Well, sir, if it was up to me, I would recommend that we get assassin team together, be formed, and eliminate him and his men from the face of the earth. The senator disagreed with this approach, and that was all that was shown of that clip. By the way, you know who that senator was? Franklin?
No.
I know. Al Gore.
Okay.
Now, what year was that, Steve?
1987.
So in 87, some people in the military intelligence community had already identified many of our enemies.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm looking this up right now, okay, with a fact-checking site.
Okay. I love those Democrat fact-checking sites, don't you? The American president at the time was Bill Clinton, and the Secretary of State was Warren Christopher. Insisted that all the prisoners be released.
Bill Clinton was what?
He was the president back then.
I think
In
not
1987,
No,
Reagan was president.
No. I'm sorry. Let me go back. Anyway, let me keep going.
Actually, it's false, Steve. I'm sorry.
Muhammad Adi was.
It didn't happen.
It was freed.
No, it didn't happen.
Now, wait a minute.
That
Let me
testimony was not about Osama bin Laden.
Who
It
was
was
it
about
about?
a terrorist named Abu Nidal.
which is part of the same group.
Yeah.
Maybe so. No, it wasn't.
Look, Franklin, this is real simple. This is what
You can't make this
This
stuff
is
up.
real simple.
Come on.
And people, and I'll say this: conservative people, religious people understand this. This is a battle for control of the world between Western civilization and basically all of the non-Christian, non-Western civilization peoples. Now, not every person, but the ideology. They hate us. They always have hated us. Osama bin Laden, we know, was involved in several of the attacks during the 90s. Bill Clinton had opportunities to get him, 3 in fact. At one point he was actually in custody, and Clinton told him to let him go. We have understood. Now, I will look at the stories that you're talking about, some of the testimony.
First of all, it was
but
not
the point
Abu
is,
Nidal.
Franklin,
Hold on.
we know
And it
who our
wasn't Al
enemies
Gore.
are.
It wasn't even a senator.
Who was
It was
it?
a committee councilman named John Nields.
The point is, we know we have enemies. We know basically who they are, and they're coming for us, whether we understand that or not. And it's not an FBI action. It's not a criminal action like this president wants to prosecute it. It's a war. And some people have understood that, and some people don't.
This was Oliver North's official statement in response to this internet hoax that went around for a decade.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay?
Yeah.
It was the committee councilman John Nields doing the questioning, not a senator. I didn't spend $60,000 on a security system. It was $16,000. The terrorist that threatened to kill me was not Osama bin Laden. It was Abu Nidal, who worked for the Libyans, not the Taliban and not in Afghanistan.
You getting that off the internet?
This is his statement.
Okay.
Franklin, the point is that the people that hate us, I'm not defending that. I don't know whether the statement's true or not. My point is, we know who hates us.
Okay.
It's a cultural divide.
It's not a
and
cultural
it
divide.
is a
We agree
cultural
on
divide.
that. I mean, I understand that we have lots of philosophical differences, John, but you couldn't possibly argue that this president hadn't been aggressive in his approach to terrorism. Nobody could argue
well,
that.
I can argue that his foreign policy has actually made things worse, but as far as his actual, killing terrorists, sure, I think he's done.
Okay.
I'm not against the drones that he's using.
I'm not either, but-
I am against the hypocrisy. I'm against the fact that he ran on closing what he called a gulag down in Guantanamo, and now that topic has just left the entire conversation. I'm against the hypocrisy of that. I'm not for closing the gulag down. I think we need the
even
gulag.
George W. Bush now thinks Guantanamo should be closed.
Well, then why isn't your man closed it in 5
we
years?
can't get the votes to do it.
Because it can't be done.
Why can't it be done?
Actually, Franklin, he can do it tomorrow, and you know that.
Well,
he
you got to
doesn't need
move
any
these
votes
people
to close.
somewhere, John. Where are you going to move them?
Well, that's what all of us have said from the get-go. The problem is not whether you can
Well, we
close it or
proposed
not.
that.
The
You didn't
problem
like
is
the idea.
what can you do with them? Well, the American people didn't like it. The people in Illinois didn't want
The
to move
people in
there.
Illinois did want them there.
Well, the
That's
reason
one
the people
place
in
they did
Illinois,
want
the
them.
only people that wanted them there were the people that didn't know why a $365 million complex was built with absolutely no prisoners to put in it.
First of all, that's not an accurate statement.
Well, it's
There's
sitting
a
empty.
federal prison there that, in a series of budget cutting, got closed down.
Which means
you're for budget cutting,
hundreds
right?
of millions of dollars of taxpayers wasted.
And it got closed down well before President Obama was elected, by the way.
Let's take a call. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Hey guys, I was listening. Frankly, I think sometimes you're kind of on the right track in a way, but you actually miss the biggest story of all. When you talk about 9/11 and when you bring that up, I think it's very interesting that the day before 9/11, we have Donald Rumsfeld talking about that the military has lost $2 trillion. $2 trillion they've lost it. They don't know where it is. The next day we have 9/11. We have never discussed the loss of the $2 trillion by the military since that time. You missed the bigger story here. Osama bin Laden, it was a CIA asset. He was set up with weapons and money with the Mujahideen to fight the Russians. He was a CIA asset. Do we not understand the implications of our foreign policy and what goes on? Why do we always miss the bigger story? We always miss that. You know, what really happened? People who talk about Oliver North as if he is some type of hero. This guy was a criminal. He was a criminal. He was with the CIA selling drugs to buy weapons for the CIA. He's a criminal. He's no one's hero. This military-industrial complex war machine, the war on terror, what a perfect war. A war you can never win and a war that never ends, and people get rich and Americans die for nothing. For nothing.
All right. Thanks, Dan. No response. Good. We can get back into the sequester of the $85 million. But first of all, we'll take this call. Go ahead, Colin.
Steve, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I don't know if I should bring this up or not because I think it's like putting your head in the bucket. But I know you have noticed. I noticed last night the gas went up 10 more cents. I want to ask them if they can. Is there something we can do about this because it's getting ridiculous? I just wondered if they can start. I don't know who's getting all of our money we're paying for gas for, but I wonder if we can, like say, the more they make, the more we can tax them or something. But something's got to be done about this because it just keeps going up.
Well
we have gas.
Thanks, Colin.
Gas prices are related to international markets. We have produced more oil in the last 10 years. And I'm taking that over 2 administrations purposefully, than at any point in our history. We import a lower percentage of our oil than at any point in about 40 years.
Frankly, both of those things are disingenuous.
No.
Well, we've imported more the last several years because the economy's been in the crapper and people aren't doing anything.
No, because new technologies have freed up new domestic sources of oil.
Technologies on private land. The bulk of our reserves are on federal land, and this president has actually reduced the production on federal land.
That's not true.
It is true, frankly.
And he's even moved.
It is absolutely true.
Just
All the
isn't
increases
true,
are on
John.
state land and private land.
He's also pushed any drilling offshore further out.
You've done away with that. You've cleared off half of the reserve in Alaska has now been ruled out of bounds.
More leases have been let in the Gulf of Mexico in the last 7 years than at any point in the last 30.
Frankly, most of that is done by the states.
The Gulf of Mexico is not controlled by
Actually,
the states.
they are,
John.
Franklin. If you want to know, Louisiana controls their Gulf so far out. Mississippi controls it so far out. They do actually control that.
The United States territorial boundary is 200 miles, and Mississippi and Louisiana do not control
Frankly, I brought
that
these numbers in before. I'll be glad to bring them back. This president has actually reduced the amount of oil produced on federal land.
The fact is, we have produced dramatically more oil
in America on private land and on state land.
I agree with you, but the point is, John.
The problem is this president has actually been going in the wrong direction.
John.
Folks,
it's real
simple. It was $1.89 when he took office. It's damn near $4 now here. Thank you, Mr. President.
It's real simple. We produce all this oil, and we don't sell it here in America, John.
Well,
we put it on the international market.
If this president had okayed the pipeline,
Again,
we would have actually had more production, more refinery capability, and more oil coming through from Canada, our friend, rather than the Middle
all
East.
intended for international ports.
This president loaned $2 trillion to Petrobras, the 7th largest corporation in the world, to drill for oil off the coast of Brazil and sell that oil to China. Thanks, folks. Your tax dollars went to Brazil so they could make money off oil and sell it to
yet
China.
Another Republican agency that was created.
Your president did it, loaned the money.
The United States Agency for International Development did that.
He has to approve those things. He has to put the negotiations together. You know he did it. He did it, and that's the facts.
We dealt with this 6 months ago.
Franklin, I don't see how you can sit there and say that this president has opened the doors for us to drill more in this country.
There's no question about it.
Well, folks, when you're paying your electric bill, he's destroyed coal.
This is a Fox News myth.
No, it's
Franklin,
not.
I
Frank.
can give you the numbers.
Explain this to me. Explain to me how domestic oil production is up 25% in the last 7 years, and this president's gotten in the way of it.
Because he shut down the production on federal land.
25%
Franklin,
in 7 years. There is no point
the
in the
oil
last
reserve,
40 years
the
where
oil-
our production
Franklin, why,
increased at that rate.
if he's so damn good at letting us produce our own energy, why is our gas prices going up? Why aren't they going down?
Because they're not affected by domestic production. It's an international marketplace.
Right now,
And you unrestrained capitalists are supposed to elect that. That's supposed to be your glory.
there's a couple of
That's what you
look,
want.
Franklin. I'm not. My problem with what he's doing is he's making us less secure from a military standpoint.
The
because
facts
instead
are-
of having oil coming in from Canada, our friend, we're having to buy it from the Middle East,
The
who are
facts-
using the money we're paying them to funnel to the
The
terrorists.
facts are.
Does that make sense to you, what he just said,
No,
Franklin?
it doesn't.
It doesn't make sense to you?
Oh, it sounds great, but it isn't true is the problem.
Oh, it's not.
No, it's not.
You're telling me the Saudis aren't funneling?
No, here's the facts, John. Whether you like it or not, 65% of the oil produced in the United States of America is sold internationally, and you know that's true.
But Franklin,
Isn't that true?
that could change in a day.
Sure. If an American
You're
company
missing the
would
point.
just say,
No,
we're
Franklin.
not going to
No,
sell ours
You're missing the
internationally,
point.
we're only gonna
As
sell
long
in
you're missing the
America.
point,
You think
Franklin.
that's gonna
As
happen?
long as everybody's getting together, it doesn't make any difference. But at the point where the Saudis start holding it over our heads, we can go,
Well, this is
screw
the-
you. We've
this
got
is
our
the
own
beau-
oil.
This is the beauty of what's actually happening, John. The facts are that within the next 15 years, the projections are that the United States is going to achieve total energy independence. Now, is that going to be oil-based?
From Vote?
From what?
What's that car name? Vote?
The Volt.
The Vote?
Chevy Volt.
Are we going to all be driving Votes?
Based upon new technologies, which is part of it. Also, the new technologies for accessing natural gas, and it turns out that we have more natural gas than the Middle East has
Yeah,
oil.
but the same people that shut down the Keystone Pipeline are now trying to shut down fracking, which is the main way we get the natural gas out, Franklin.
No, what they're trying to do is make sure it's done safely.
No, they're shutting it down.
As I said, John, they're trying to make
Franklin,
sure it's done
those people produced a report, Franklin, that said that the best way for a country, a culture to live is in mud huts. They actually
John,
produced a report saying
John,
the
I
people
don't
who
know
live
if-
in
I don't
mud
know if- I
huts
don't know if you have
live the
seen-
best way.
I don't know if you have seen, since you don't watch
Well,
anything
Franklin,
but Fox News.
I don't
you
think the
probably
vast
haven't
majority
seen
of
any
people in
these
America
reports.
are going to quit driving their cars and live in mud huts so Al Gore
Nobody
and his
suggested
friends can
that.
be happy.
Have
Nobody
y'all ever
suggested-
seen a car hooked up that charging station at Cracker Barrel yet?
Well, that's great. You can drive 60, 80 miles, and then you can charge for 4 or 5 hours, and
I
then you
know.
can drive 60 or 80 miles
There
again.
was a big article in the paper a couple weeks ago I saw that America is now ready for the electric cars. The charging stations are in place around the country.
Well, there's a big difference.
What a waste of money.
There's a big difference between what's happening in urban areas where people drive primarily 5 or 10 miles a day, and places like us where we have a lot of people who drive 70 or 80 or 100 miles a day. And there's different standards that apply to those people. Electric cars are going to be the wave of the future in those urban areas because it doesn't make sense
How are you
to
gonna
be,
produce
to
the
be producing
electricity?
all that smog
How are you
out
going to
there.
produce the electricity, Franklin? This president's effectively destroyed the coal industry, which is the bulk of our electricity production. Where's all this extra electricity going to come from?
The question is that we're gradually converting those plants over to natural gas because we have that in abundant resources, and it can be burned much more cleanly.
What are you going to convert the income in the coal mining countries of West Virginia to? What do those people do?
So your theory, John, is that as long as somebody can make a buck on it, it's okay.
Well, I don't know, Franklin. My theory is the coal miners in West Virginia are going to starve to death.
Your theory is that we shouldn't have progress, that we shouldn't try to do things better.
We were having progress, Franklin. We were putting scrubbers on the coal. We were finding ways to burn the coal cleanly until this president shut the industry down.
They have not shut the industry
down.
Coal
is the most abundant energy source we have right now. And he effectively destroyed it.
That's not true.
Franklin,
natural gas is the most.
But it's not here yet, Franklin.
Oh, it is, John. It is here. Whole fleets of trucks are now being converted over to natural gas burning instead of diesel.
Well, as soon as the environmentalists get their way and we can't frack anymore, you'll shut down that industry too.
There's a reason for having that discussion. I don't know if you've seen the videos of people whose tap water they can now light a torch under.
Well, let me ask you a question,
Franklin.
Do
you think we ought to look into that and see if we can figure out a way to do it safely?
Franklin. Well, let me ask you a question. Then why didn't we do that with coal? Why did we shut the industry down instead of continuing to find ways to make it cleaner and safer?
We have not shut the industry down.
Ask the industry. Ask the coal miners in West Virginia how they feel about that.
John, we have not shut the industry down.
You've got TVA saying they're planning on basically closing all of their coal-fired plants at this point.
Because they're going to convert over.
To what, Franklin?
Natural gas.
What? But you just said we didn't shut the industry down.
We haven't shut it down, but
we have shut it down.
See, make up your mind.
Franklin?
Do you want the government propping up these companies?
I want the government to stay out of it.
Well, then we're going to convert over to something that's more abundant and
cleaner. Is that because the coal? Is that because the coal companies decided that on their own part?
You remember when the national forests were dying? Do you want the government to stay out of that?
Franklin, I want the government to quit shutting down industries. This president has destroyed the coal industry. Everybody pretty much agrees with that.
Everybody doesn't agree
Franklin,
with that.
In his own words, he said, if my policies are implemented, energy prices will necessarily skyrocket. That's the president's own words. So folks, get ready. That's what he wants to do.
Short term versus long term.
Franklin,
it's a typical
the man said energy prices will necessarily skyrocket.
What has this president done that's a positive? What is something good that's happened from this president, Franklin?
Well, I'm not sure you've got enough time for us to go over all of it.
Well, I'll tell you what.
But let's start talking about
Let's give me three things.
We got a president who's trying to take the long-term approach for the country.
He's
pushing us toward better technology.
Socialism.
He's pushing us. All the Republicans I've seen have applauded his efforts at trying to reform education. That's what I thought you guys were for, as he's doing that.
Well, he killed the voucher program in D.C. that had actually been successful.
I've seen Republican after Republican applaud him for the approach that he's taken. Do you disagree with them now?
Look, Franklin, I'm sorry.
To better educate kindergarten kids.
We're not part of the. Well, matter of fact, what's interesting about that is at the same time he was proposing universal, basically pre-K, his own government produced a report saying that Head Start had basically been a total failure.
Head Start is a different kind of program.
Oh, I see. Well, he's got the super double secret program that he's going to probably tell us about.
It's just different from what he proposed.
After he puts it through by executive action.
Just different from what he proposed.
Let's take a call. Go ahead, caller. You're live.
Hey, Franklin. You think that what he's done with doing with education? Do you know anything about Common Core curriculum?
Yes, I am familiar with it.
50% instructional text.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you this. What do you know about Common Core?
Well, the concept basically is that if we're going to try to administer testing to do evaluations of student progress, for that to be meaningful, they have to be having some of the same instruction. That's the theory behind it.
Actually, that's the scam that they tell you. Actually, what Common Core curriculum is it's a dumbing down of the whole system. And it also, what it does is it teaches every student everywhere the same thing. under the guise that because a student might move from one state to another, which in actuality is less than 2% of what really happens, that those students will be tested and based on everything will be the same thing. Well, I don't think I know anywhere that I think that any students need to be tested. All students need to be taught the same curriculum. This is about curriculum control, and once a state signs on to Common Core, well, you need to read what's going on. They cannot change one iota about the curriculum at all. They can add a few additional things, but those things that they add cannot be in the testing.
Well, Dan, not necessarily for the same reasons, but you and I might agree about some of that. I think this whole rush to having standardized achievement tests has not been good for education. Now, I understand the theory. You want some way to evaluate progress. I get that. But I don't know that that approach is the best way to do it.
Here's the real problem for education.
Thanks, Dan.
The whole function for the last 40 years has been we're not spending enough. We actually are the highest per pupil spending in the world, and our kids don't perform at the top. So some people with some intelligence might conclude from that it's not about how much money you spend, it's about where you spend the money.
I know it's about time for us to wind it up. I had one last thing I wanted to bring up real quick, and this shouldn't take but a second, but Hillary Clinton just went out of office, and now she's come back, and she's talked about some of the programs that her and Bill don't agree with President Obama. And anyway, I'm just wondering, do you think Hillary's getting geared up to run for president?
I would say that she's getting geared up to explore the possibility of running for president. 4 years is a long time, so it's really hard to say what will ultimately happen. I think that there's a good chance of that.
I think the egos are massive on her and her husband's part. And now, any
only
politician
you're talking about
is.
68 years old. Somebody might.
I was going to say, I
don't know
think
what's
she's
going to happen.
I think she's going to be too old. I think it's difficult.
I think so too. Anyway, she was. I was watching her the other day, and it was pretty interesting to me that she was talking about she and Bill didn't agree with some of the philosophies of Mr. Obama. It waited until this was maybe 30 minutes after she was through in office that she started criticizing some of the things. Anyway, we've had another good time today. Appreciate you coming in, Franklin, as always, and John, appreciate your input. And remember, folks, this is Backfire, and anything could happen. So if you've got any questions you want to ask us in the future or want us to talk about or any subjects, give us a call or send us a text or check our Facebook page out or whatever. Anyway, this is Steve Hickson. We'll see you again next Wednesday. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson, John Stanberry, and Franklin Chansey. Catch them again on Whoop FM at noon today and every Wednesday morning from 7:30 to 8:30. Now, back to more music on Whoop FM.
Yeah, I'm going to confess, we did almost bend over with laughter, though. We had to get a grip on ourselves.
Dr. Christopher Chase, with Associates in Plastic and Reconstructive Surgery, now in Cleveland on Wednesdays at 2350 Ocoee Street. Call 624-0021 for an appointment now. Certified by the American